The city never truly slept. Even in its quietest hours, there was always movement. The distant hum of engines, the flicker of neon lights across shop windows, the shuffle of feet against cracked pavement. And in that rhythm of life, a boy stood barefoot, his clothes no more than tattered rags, his hands trembling not from the cold of the night, but from hunger that had long become his companion. He was small, frail, with eyes far too deep for his age, eyes that carried the kind of wisdom born not from books or classrooms, but from hardship, from nights spent under broken bridges and mornings spent chasing scraps others had thrown away. His name was Emmanuel, but most didn't bother to ask. To them, he was just another beggar boy, another shadow fading into the background of a city too busy to notice. Before we go any further, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. That night, Emmanuel wandered the streets with an ache in his stomach and a prayer on his lips. He wasn't praying for bread or coins, though he needed them desperately. He was praying for something greater, for a chance, a reason, a miracle. He didn't know how or when, but deep in his soul, he felt it. Life had something more in store for him than these dark corners. And then, as fate would have it, his wandering feet carried him toward the glowing gates of a mansion he had seen only from afar. It rose like a palace against the night sky, guarded by iron fences and rows of sculpted hedges. Behind those gates lived a man known throughout the city, a millionaire whose wealth was whispered about with awe, envy, and admiration. His name was Mr. Emmanuel Johnson, a titan of business, a man who built empires with the stroke of a pen. Emmanuel pressed his small hands against the cold iron bars, peering inside as light spilled across marble floors and chandeliers gleamed like fallen stars. He had never stepped so close before. But what caught his eye wasn't the splendor. It was the faint sound of crying drifting from an open balcony above. A child's voice. Fragile, painful, heartbroken. It froze Emmanuel where he stood, because in that cry he heard not the sound of wealth, nor privilege, nor luxury. He heard the sound of suffering, the same kind he knew all too well. And without realizing it, the boy whispered into the night, "Who's crying up there?" The question would change everything. Emmanuel lingered at the gates, torn between fear and curiosity. His heart pounded in his chest, and for a moment, he thought of running. Boys like him didn't belong anywhere near gates like these. But that sound, the cry, it called to him, piercing deeper than hunger ever had. It was the cry of someone who carried pain too heavy for their small frame. Inside the mansion, lights shifted. A silhouette appeared at the balcony railing. Emmanuel squinted, straining his eyes, and there she was. A little girl, no older than 7, her arms limp against her sides as she leaned in her chair. A wheelchair. Her face was streaked with tears, her lips trembling as she whispered words Emmanuel couldn't quite catch. She was the daughter of the great Emmanuel Johnson, the daughter no one spoke about in the gossip-filled corners of the city. Emmanuel gripped the iron bars tighter. He didn't understand why his chest hurt at the sight of her, why he felt her pain as though it were his own. But before he could move, a deep voice thundered from inside the mansion. "Princess, it's late. You should be resting." The girl wiped her face quickly as her father stepped onto the balcony. Mr. Emmanuel Johnson was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a robe of fine silk. His presence commanded silence. Yet tonight his shoulders seemed heavier, his eyes darker. He knelt beside his daughter, his hand brushing her hair tenderly. "I'm trying, Daddy," the girl whispered, "but it hurts. It hurts that I can't walk. It hurts that I can't run like the others. I don't want to be like this forever." Adewale's lips trembled, but he forced a smile. "One day, my angel, one day medicine will find a way." But Emmanuel pressed against the gate, whispered something he never imagined he would say aloud. "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." The words slipped from him like a secret he had carried for years. His own voice startled him. His knees went weak as the weight of his audacity sank in. Who was he, a barefoot beggar, to speak to a man of such wealth and power? Yet the words were out, echoing into the night, carried by fate itself. The balcony fell silent. The millionaire froze. Slowly, his gaze turned toward the gate. "Who said that?" Adewale's voice thundered, sharp and commanding. Emmanuel's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to run, to vanish into the shadows, but instead his small frame stepped forward into the beam of the streetlight. "I did, sir," Emmanuel said softly, his voice trembling yet steady with conviction. "I can help her." The night itself seemed to hold its breath. For a long moment, silence weighed heavy over the mansion grounds. The millionaire's piercing eyes locked onto the frail boy standing at his gates, his robe swaying slightly in the breeze. His daughter's small hands gripped the balcony railing, her tear-streaked face glowing faintly under the golden chandelier light. "You," Adewale's voice was low, almost incredulous. "A street boy dares to make promises medicine itself cannot keep." Emmanuel swallowed hard, his bare feet pressed into the gravel, tiny stones biting into his skin. Yet he didn't flinch. His heart thundered in his chest, but his eyes never left the man above. "I know I look like nothing, sir," he said quietly, "but I swear on everything I have left. I can help her." Adewale's face hardened. "Leave now, boy, before I call the guards." But then, something unexpected happened. From her chair on the balcony, the little girl's voice cut through the night, fragile but strong. "Daddy, wait." Her father turned, startled by the tone in her words. She leaned forward, her tiny fingers trembling as she pointed toward Emmanuel. "Please," she whispered. "He said he can help me. Let him try." "Princess, please, Daddy," she pleaded, her voice breaking into sobs. "Please. Everyone else tells me it will take years. They tell me it might never happen. What if he knows something? Just once. Please listen." The powerful man who had silenced boardrooms and bent rivals to his will stood powerless before the tears of his daughter. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched, yet his eyes betrayed the truth. He would do anything to take away her pain. Anything. Finally, he raised a hand. "Guards, bring the boy inside." The heavy gates creaked open, their iron hinges groaning. Emmanuel's heart leapt into his throat as two men in crisp uniforms stepped out, their eyes sharp with suspicion. They grabbed him by the arms, their grips rough, their expressions filled with disdain. "This child doesn't belong here," one muttered, but Adewale's voice cut them off. "Bring him to the study, now." Dragged forward, Emmanuel stumbled across the marble driveway, his dirty feet leaving faint smudges on the pristine stone. The chandeliers above blazed brighter as he stepped through towering oak doors into a world of gold, silk, and polished glass. He had never seen such splendor. And yet, standing in the midst of it, he felt none of its comfort, only the weight of every eye on him, waiting, doubting, judging. And still, the boy whispered to himself, "Don't be afraid. This is your chance." The study was a vast chamber of dark mahogany and polished brass, its shelves lined with books that seemed older than the boy himself. Heavy curtains framed tall windows, and a single lamp glowed on the desk where stacks of contracts lay waiting for signatures. The guards shoved Emmanuel forward until he stumbled onto the Persian rug, his knees hitting the floor. Mr. Adewale Johnson entered behind him, his robe trailing lightly across the marble, his face unreadable. He closed the door with deliberate calm, the click echoing like a gavel in a courtroom. His daughter was not present. This was no longer a moment of comfort, but of reckoning. "Speak," Adewale said, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "What gave you the audacity to stand before my house, to promise the impossible? Do you take me for a fool?" Emmanuel's lips trembled, but he lifted his chin. "No, sir. I only spoke the truth. I can help her. I don't know how to explain it, but I can." The guards sneered. One of them barked, "This boy is wasting your time, sir. Let us throw him back into the street where he belongs." But Adewale raised his hand, silencing them. He leaned forward, his sharp gaze locking onto Emmanuel's. "You claim you can heal my daughter. Better than doctors, better than specialists, better than all the money in the world? A barefoot beggar dares make such claims?" Emmanuel's heart raced, but he refused to bow his head. "Sir," he whispered, "sometimes the answers the world looks for in science are hidden in places no one thinks to search. I don't have wealth. I don't have education. But I have something else." Adewale's brows furrowed. He searched the boy's eyes, trying to find deceit, arrogance, or madness. Yet all he saw was a strange, unshakable sincerity. "Something else?" the millionaire repeated. "What exactly do you mean?" Emmanuel's voice softened, as if the truth was too delicate for the air around them. "A gift, sir. Since I was a child, I've carried it. People laughed. Some feared it. I don't fully understand it myself, but when I see someone hurting, it's as if I can feel their pain inside me. And sometimes, when I lay my hands on them," he hesitated, his voice breaking, "and they get better." The guards exchanged incredulous glances, one muttering under his breath, "Nonsense." But Adewale's eyes narrowed. He had built his fortune on one principle: trust nothing but proof. Words meant nothing to him without evidence. Yet something about the boy unsettled him, gnawed at the iron walls of his skepticism. "Very well," he said at last, his voice low and deliberate. "If you claim such a gift, then you will show me. Fail, and I swear on my name, you will regret ever stepping foot near my gates." The boy's chest tightened, but he nodded. He had no plan, only faith, and fate was about to test if it was enough. The mansion's corridors stretched like endless tunnels, lined with paintings of long-forgotten ancestors and chandeliers that sparkled with cold brilliance. Emmanuel walked between the guards, his bare feet silent against the polished marble. Every step felt heavier than the last, but his resolve burned brighter with each heartbeat. Finally, the doors opened into a room bathed in soft golden light. At its center sat a small girl in a wheelchair, her dark curls falling loosely over her face, her tiny hands folded on her lap. She looked up, startled, as the guards entered with Emmanuel. Her father followed closely behind, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. "Princess," Adewale said gently, kneeling by her side, "this boy claims he can help you. I do not believe him, but since you asked me to listen, I will. You may let him try." The girl's wide eyes darted between her father and the ragged child standing in the shadows. She blinked, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. Finally, her small, trembling voice escaped. You're the boy from the gate." Emmanuel nodded slowly, stepping forward. His hands shook as he clasped them together. "Yes, I'm Emmanuel." The girl studied him, her gaze searching past the dirt on his skin, past the tattered shirt that barely clung to his frame. She saw the fire in his eyes, the same fire that had reached her from the street below. Something inside her stirred. Hope. "Come closer," she whispered. Adewale's hand shot up. "Careful, princess. He is still a stranger." But she shook her head firmly. "No, Daddy. Please, let him." Reluctantly, Adewale nodded, his jaw tight. Emmanuel stepped forward until he stood just before her chair. He knelt, so his eyes were level with hers. Up close, he could see the streaks of dried tears on her cheeks, the exhaustion behind her small smile. "I know you're tired of being in this chair," Emmanuel whispered, his voice trembling with empathy. "I can't promise you miracles, but I can try to help." The girl's eyes glistened. "No one ever says that. They only say someday. They never say now." Her words cut through the air like a blade. Adewale looked away, his powerful frame trembling. For all his fortune, he could not buy his daughter the one thing she longed for: freedom from her chair. "Do what you claim you can," Adewale said coldly, though his voice carried the weight of a desperate man. "But hear me, boy. If you bring false hope to my child, if you break her heart further, you will answer to me." Emmanuel swallowed hard. His hands hovered uncertainly in the air, inches from the girl's legs. The room grew deathly quiet, the ticking of the ornate clock on the wall, the faint crackle of fire in the hearth. Even the guards held their breath. And then, with a trembling exhale, Emmanuel placed his palms gently on her knees. The world seemed to stop. The girl gasped softly as Emmanuel's palms rested on her fragile knees. His hands were small, roughened by the streets, but there was something strange about them, something that made her shiver, not with fear, but with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Emmanuel closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his lids, the world fell silent. He no longer heard the ticking clock or the fire's whisper. Instead, he felt her pain, like shards of glass buried deep within her legs, like heavy chains dragging down every muscle. every bone. For a moment, the weight was unbearable, and he nearly pulled away. But he held on. Adewale stood rigid, arms folded tightly across his chest. He watched with narrowed eyes, torn between anger at the boy's audacity and the faintest flicker of something he dared not name: hope. The guards shifted uncomfortably, exchanging skeptical glances. Minutes passed. To everyone else, it looked like nothing was happening. Just a boy with dirty hands pressed against a broken child's legs. Adewale's patience snapped. "Enough!" he barked, his voice like thunder. "This farce ends now." But before the guards could move, a sound stopped them all. "Daddy?" The girl's voice trembled as her small hands gripped the armrests of her chair. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I can feel them." Adewale froze. His stern mask faltered. "What did you say?" "My legs, Daddy," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I can feel them. I haven't felt this in so long." The room seemed to sway. Emmanuel's hands still pressed against her knees, his lips moving in silent prayer, his entire body trembling as though the pain was pouring out of her and into him. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The girl let out a sudden cry, not of pain, but of shock. Her toes twitched, once, then again. Her small feet shifted beneath the blanket draped across her lap. "Did you see that?" One guard gasped, his voice breaking the spell of silence. Adewale's eyes widened. He dropped to his knees beside his daughter's chair, his hands clutching hers in trembling disbelief. "Angel, move them again. Show me." She focused, tears streaming freely, and slowly, shakily, her right foot lifted an inch from the footrest. It wasn't much, but it was everything. "Daddy!" she cried, laughter and sobs mixing together. "I can move it! I can really move it!" For the first time in years, Adewale Johnson, the man the city called unshakable, untouchable, collapsed against his daughter's lap, his body racked with tears. He wept openly, his arms wrapped tightly around her, as if afraid she would vanish if he let go. Emmanuel staggered back, his body weak, his breath ragged. He nearly collapsed, but caught himself on the arm of a chair. His vision blurred, but a faint smile tugged at his lips. He had kept his promise. The room had changed. The heavy silence of doubt was gone, replaced by the electric hum of something unexplainable. The air itself felt charged, as though the walls had witnessed a secret that could never again be contained. The little girl, Adewale's daughter, sobbed with joy, her trembling hands reaching for her father. Her tiny legs quivered beneath the blanket, the smallest movements carrying the weight of eternity. "Daddy, I told you," she whispered through her tears. "I told you he could help." Adewale clutched her tightly, his silk robes soaked with his own tears. For a man who had conquered boardrooms, silenced rivals, and commanded empires, it was the humblest moment of his life. He pulled back, staring at her legs as though he were seeing them for the first time. "Move them again, Angel. Please show me," he begged, his voice cracking. And she did. This time both feet twitched, her right lifting slightly, her left trembling, but alive. For a girl who had been told she might never move again, it was a resurrection. The guards stood frozen, their mouths open. One of them, hardened by years of duty, crossed himself silently, muttering, "God above." But in the midst of celebration, Emmanuel nearly collapsed. His knees buckled, his small body racked with exhaustion. The pain he had drawn from the girl still throbbed inside him, heavier than hunger, sharper than cold nights on the street. He stumbled, his vision dimming. "Boy!" Adewale shouted, reaching out. He caught Emmanuel before he fell, lowering him onto the rug. The millionaire's hands shook as he looked at the frail child who had just done what doctors, surgeons, and wealth could not. "Who are you?" Adewale whispered, his voice trembling. "What are you?" Emmanuel forced a weak smile. "I'm just a boy, sir." His eyelids fluttered. "But God, he gave me this gift, to carry pain, to give hope." The room fell utterly still. Adewale looked at his daughter, then at the boy lying limp on the floor. His mind, sharp as a blade in business, could not reconcile what he had just seen. And yet, there was no denying it. "Send for the doctor," he commanded, his voice steady but urgent. "And keep this within these walls. Do you understand me?" The guards bowed quickly, but their eyes betrayed the truth. Something this powerful could not remain hidden for long. Word had a way of escaping, of finding ears eager for stories of miracles and mysteries. And already beyond the mansion gates, the city stirred. A beggar boy with the power to heal? A millionaire's daughter moving her legs for the first time? Such whispers, once born, could never be silenced. Inside the room, Adewale knelt again, this time beside Emmanuel. He placed a trembling hand on the boy's shoulder. "You saved my daughter," he said softly. "You've given me what all my wealth could not buy. For that, I owe you everything." But in Emmanuel's faint smile, there was no greed, no hunger for riches, only the quiet, humble light of someone who had finally found his purpose. The following morning, the mansion was quieter than usual, but beneath that silence was a current of restlessness. Servants whispered in corridors, their eyes darting toward the young boy who now rested in one of the guest rooms. A beggar in a palace bed, wrapped in linen sheets softer than anything he had ever touched. Doctors had come at dawn. They examined Adewale's daughter with disbelief, their polished instruments and practiced hands failing to explain what they were seeing. For years, her condition had defied medical solutions, yet now the faint movement of her toes and the twitch of her legs stood as undeniable proof. "This is impossible," one doctor muttered, scribbling frantically in his notebook, but Adewale silenced them with a glare. "No," he said firmly, "it is not impossible. It is a gift." The little girl clung to Emmanuel whenever she could, her wide eyes never leaving him. To her, he was no longer just a ragged boy who spoke from the gates. He was hope incarnate, the answer to every whispered prayer she had ever made at night. By midday, however, the whispers had already begun to spread beyond the walls. A servant, eager to impress, let slip a single sentence at the market. "The master's daughter moved her legs because of a boy." By evening, rumors carried like wildfire through the city streets. In alleys and marketplaces, people leaned in close, their voices hushed yet urgent. Some dismissed it as nonsense. Others clung to it desperately. "A boy who heals? They say he's a beggar. No doctor could help her, but he did. Where is he? Where can we find him?" By nightfall, strangers lingered outside the mansion gates, their faces pressed against the iron bars. Mothers carrying sick children, old men leaning on canes, women with weary eyes whispering prayers. Inside, Emmanuel sat by the fire in the guest room, his small body still recovering from the strain. His stomach now full for the first time in months, his skin washed clean. He looked almost unrecognizable, yet the weight of what had happened pressed heavily on him. He never wanted fame. He never wanted crowds. All he ever prayed for was a chance, just one moment to matter. But now, he had opened a door that could never be closed. Adewale entered quietly, his presence filling the room. He studied Emmanuel for a long moment before speaking. "The world is beginning to hear of you," he said softly. "Already people wait outside my gates. They come with hope in their eyes. Hope I cannot give them. But you, boy, you can." Emmanuel lowered his gaze. His fingers tightened around the blanket. "Sir, I didn't ask for this. I only wanted to help her. I never wanted the world to look at me." Adewale placed a hand on his shoulder, firm but gentle. "Sometimes we do not choose the path. Sometimes the path chooses us, and when it does, we must walk it, no matter how heavy the steps may be." Outside, the voices of the desperate grew louder, echoing through the mansion walls. Emmanuel's gift was no longer a secret, and soon it would test them all. The days that followed were a blur of quiet determination. Emmanuel never left the hospital, sleeping in a chair by her bedside, his rough hands folded in prayer more often than not. The doctors prepared her for intensive therapy, sessions that would demand everything from her, mind and body alike. They warned Emmanuel it would be grueling, that setbacks would come, that it might break her spirit. But when the first morning came, and she was wheeled into the therapy hall, Emmanuel was right there, kneeling before her wheelchair, his eyes steady on hers. "Don't look at the machines. Don't look at the pain. Look at me," he whispered. "If you fall, I'll catch you. If you cry, I'll hold you. If you stumble, I'll lift you. But you," he tapped gently over her heart, "you must fight. The room was hushed as the little girl, trembling, placed her feet on the ground. She clutched the parallel bars, her face pale with fear. One therapist nodded, encouraging her to shift her weight forward. Her legs quivered. She took a step, or something close to it, and gasped. Emmanuel's eyes filled with tears. She tried again, her knees wobbling, her arms straining. This time her foot dragged forward an inch. The therapists applauded softly, but Emmanuel was already whispering her name like a prayer. Again, he said gently. Do it again. She did. Each small motion felt like lifting the weight of the world, but Emmanuel's voice steadied her, carried her. That's it. That's my girl. One day you'll run, you'll dance, you'll climb trees. But for now, 1 inch, 1 step, that's victory. Her father watched from the doorway, unable to breathe. He saw Emmanuel wiping sweat from her forehead, kneeling beside her, whispering encouragements. He saw the boy's hands, calloused from hardship, holding hers with reverence, as though she were made of glass and fire at the same time. And for the first time in years, the father's heart stirred with something foreign, hope. By the end of the session, she collapsed back into her wheelchair, exhausted. But her face, oh, her face glowed with triumph. Papa, she whispered, her voice breaking. I, I stood. Tears ran down her cheeks. The father fell to his knees beside her and kissed her hands, unable to find words. Emmanuel simply smiled, though his own eyes were red with tears. The staff looked on in silence. They weren't just witnessing therapy. They were witnessing a miracle born of faith, love, and an unshakable will. And as the lights dimmed in the hospital ward that evening, Emmanuel stayed by her side, humming softly, a lullaby that carried her into sleep. The same lullaby he had once sung for his little sister on the streets when the world was too cruel. But deep inside Emmanuel, a storm was stirring. He had given everything, his hope, his soul, to this girl's fight. And though he asked for nothing, fate had a way of testing the purest hearts in ways they never saw coming. Weeks turned into months. Each day began with struggle and ended with progress. Emmanuel never faltered, never left her side, never once allowed despair to darken the girl's spirit. Where doctors offered medicine, Emmanuel gave something rarer. Faith. Where machines could not reach, his words carried her. Then one bright morning, in a quiet hospital corridor, it happened. She stood, without the wheelchair, without the bars. Emmanuel's hand was in hers, steady, but she took the step alone. One foot, then another. Her laughter echoed down the hall, ringing like music no one had heard in years. The father wept openly, his powerful frame shaking as he watched the daughter he once thought forever bound to a chair walk again. She turned back, arms outstretched, and ran, wobbly, unsteady but free, straight into her father's embrace. Nurses clapped, some wiped their eyes, but it was Emmanuel who stood still, silent, his face lifted toward the heavens. He had asked for nothing, and yet he had been given everything. The millionaire knelt before Emmanuel, tears streaking his cheeks. How can I ever repay you? You gave me my daughter back. You gave me hope I thought was lost forever. Emmanuel smiled softly, shaking his head. Sir, I didn't do it. She did. I only reminded her she could. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of truth. The man, overwhelmed, insisted. He offered riches, education, a home, a future. But Emmanuel only looked back at the girl, now standing tall with radiant pride. All I ask, he whispered, is that you never let her forget she is stronger than the world ever told her. Silence fell, heavy and sacred. Then the man stood, placed his hand on Emmanuel's shoulder, and spoke words the boy never expected to hear. From this day on, you are family. And so it was. The beggar boy, once invisible to the world, found himself embraced not for wealth, not for status, but for the purity of his heart. The daughter walked again, not just in body but in spirit, her laughter filling halls that had long been silent. And the father, once hardened by grief, was reborn through the miracle of a boy who had nothing, yet gave everything. As seasons passed, Emmanuel's story spread, whispered in homes and streets alike. People said they saw him walking hand in hand with the girl, guiding her steps, both smiling at the wonder of life. And those who heard the tale did not speak of a doctor or a millionaire, but of a beggar boy whose faith healed more than broken bones. It healed broken hearts. And in the quiet of the night, when the world was still, Emmanuel often sat beneath the stars, remembering the sister he once lost. He whispered to her, telling her of the girl who now walked, of the family he found, of the love that endured. And in the rustle of the wind, he felt her answer. You did well, brother. You did well. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.